Hello and welcome to Devlin's Pirate Radio Show. I be Devlin and I've got a great Halloween episode lined up for you. And we've got a great one, so forget about swabbing that deck and cleaning up that poop.
Okay, I'm not going to talk like a pirate. All this. I thought for the Halloween episode, I thought I'd dress like a pirate. I thought since I call myself Pirate Radio Show that I should be a pirate, but I can't do that. I'm going to just make myself laugh or sick or something. Anyhow, I am Devlin Bishop, and thank you for joining me for a very special episode here. It is the Halloween episode. We're not going to do much special for it, but I'm going to talk about one of my favorite holidays, Halloween. And I think Halloween has grown in so much popularity in the last several years. Even when I was a kid, it was quite popular, but it was pretty much for kids when I first went. And now you just see adults indulging in, they decorate, they look forward to wearing costumes, they go to parties. It's great to see how Halloween has become so ingratiated into our hearts. Well, let's get what I like to call the Halloween elephant out of the room. And a lot of people don't like to talk about this, but I do, so I'm going to throw it out there. I love Halloween for one thing, and that is the fact that it doesn't make any sense. We spend the whole year teaching our kids not to take from strangers, not to talk to strangers, and then for one night we throw that all away and send them to people's houses to not only talk to them, trick or treat, but to actually take candy from them. And I know it's a tradition that goes way back, years and hundreds of years ago, but the truth be told, it is a little ridiculous that we do that. I never really actually thought of this. As a kid, I just loved it. I loved the fact that we got to dress up. I loved that we went out at night and that we got to collect candy. But it wasn't until I met this one family that used to, for their kids, they didn't let them really go out trick-or-treating a lot. They would go around, maybe to a couple of the main neighbors, and then basically they would just take them out to buy some stuff, and then they'd all get together and watch a movie or something. And I thought, wow, that sucks, I can't believe it's Halloween. And then I remember talking to them, and they told me this. And it really opened my eyes. And as much as I still think Halloween is awesome, I think it's absolutely true that, we basically go against everything and just suddenly let our kids slip for one night. But I'm not here to reprimand people. I'm here for people who love Halloween. When I was a kid, I just absolutely adored it. It was a little different back then. You could either go out and buy your costume, and back then the costumes looked pretty cheap. I don't know if you guys remember growing up and seeing those plastic, they would be horribly plastic, like a face of someone. I don't care if it was one of the Charlie's Angels or Batman or $6 Million Man. And then you'd get just like this generic little plastic cloth that would say the name of the show. It didn't look realistic at all. Or if you were lucky, your family would make one for you. And we always tried to make my costumes because my mother didn't really like me wearing masks. So I remember, going out I remember being a pirate one year. And I remember even using instead of using makeup, I remember they used to burn cork for 5 o'clock shadow and to make black, and then they'd rub it on my face. And, I remember a couple of times they would make really, really nice costumes. I remember all the other kids in my neighborhood used to get their costumes made for them, though I remember one friend who wanted to be a robot, and he was all in boxes, and he could barely walk, and he tripped a couple times and would fall flat on his face. He never got hurt because he was in big, bulky boxes. And I remember they'd always have those old Halloween, lessons and safety tips, and they always said, don't wear costumes that were a thing. But there was always one kid in the neighborhood that always had to wear some ridiculous costume that looked cool until you actually saw the mechanics of it. Being different, knowing I was gay but not knowing the words, it was nice too, because I got to be in drag a couple of times. and I really enjoyed that. Now, at the time, I didn't know if I enjoyed it, but I wasn't a kid who liked to attract attention, but I thought it was weird that a couple times I actually liked going to dressed as a woman to a school, and I don't recall it really bothering me or affecting me or anything. My favorite of these costumes was I was Pippi Longstockings. It's a whole other segment of my love for the old Pippi Longstockings movies. I know they're really bad and really out of date, but I own them all, and I still watch them occasionally, and they make me very misty. But I got to be Pippi Longstockings one year, and I absolutely loved it. Now, when I look back now, it was a costume that was kind of dangerous, because now, the kids are all very, don't watch the weapons you bring, don't have too many, pointed sticks, or, But I remember my parents made this costume where they had a wig, and they braided the wig, and then they literally put an old wire hanger in there to give me my Pippi Longstockings hairdo. Now, I'd go to school, and I literally could have poked kids' eyes out because they were long. I wanted them to look authentic, but talk about a dangerous thing. But, that was the late 70s, and we didn't worry too much about things like that, So I never got reprimanded for wearing that. I also remember one year I went with a friend, and we were Laverne and Shirley, and I got to be Laverne. So basically, that was just a drag outfit with me with the letter L on my chest. I also my parents went out one year, and they had a professional costume made for me, and it was a skunk, and I really liked that. It blows my mind, because sometimes I think back and I go, my parents just didn't seem to be the kind to do that, but it was pretty elaborate, and again, it was a costume where the tail was all wire hangers. So I could bend it and stuff, and I made a really cute skunk. And again, with the cork to put on my nose and my cheeks. And, it just blows me away. Apparently my parents like to work in wire hangers and stuff like that, No Joan Crawford references there. But of course, you grow up, and eventually you hit that inevitable age where, you go to school dances more dressed up rather than go trick-or-treating, because, at a certain age, you're just suddenly, nobody's trick-or-treating anymore. And even though you still want to, yeah, I probably can't. And I never went to the Halloween costume, so Halloween, I went through a phase where Halloween really didn't mean anything to me. But the great thing is Halloween now does mean things again. Because, as I said, we decorate all the time for Halloween. We have all our decorations up, and I think they look absolutely phenomenal. And Mike and I really get into it. We watch a lot of, I watch a lot of horror movies around this time. And we have a lot of Halloween specials we like to watch. We love to watch, the Snoopy, it's the Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown. Even though it's one of my favorites, it kind of goes against everything that Linus is. And Linus is a favorite character of mine. Because, I remember at the Christmas episode, he gives that beautiful speech to remind them what Christmas is truly about. Very religious, very thing. And he kind of does that in a couple of other ones. And then for the Halloween one, he's sitting in a pumpkin patch waiting for something called the Great Pumpkin. That to me almost comes off a little satanic, like he's raising the Great Pumpkin. And I'm like, I don't know, somebody who's supposed to be so well-read and who can quote the Bible so beautifully in the Christmas episode, I find it weird that now he's believing in something that seems very dark. And then don't even get me started with the Easter Beagle, because that was just, I love the episode, but again, Linus starts going into some beliefs that, hopefully he stayed on his true beliefs like he originally did. Another one of our favorite Halloween episodes is we are one of the few people who own a copy of the Paul Lynde Halloween special. Now, few have never seen this. I don't know if I should recommend you going out to see it, but it is really horribly bad humor that Mike and I just get a kick out of. And one of the reasons it was released on DVD is because one of its biggest claim to fame is it was the first primetime appearance of the rock group Kiss, and they perform about 3 songs in it, and they're absolutely fantastic. But Paul Lynde was, he's famous for, he did shows like Bewitched, and he did, of course, Hollywood Squares, and he was he was obviously a gay man, but they never ever said the words. But he had these real quips and stuff, and he was like biting, and some of his humor doesn't translate today, but for somebody like me, I still get a kick out of seeing that. And, check it out if you dare. If you dare. As I said, Halloween has become special again to me. Not only do we, celebrate it around here, we also, give out candy. I used to help give out candy at my parents' place. I used to always dress up doing it. I'd always make a Halloween music mix and play it. And I wouldn't try to be too scary. I just wanted to hear Halloween music and give out candy. It was always nice seeing the kids coming up, I'm not one of those, every time a kid does something, but I have to admit, sometimes you'd see like a little kid coming up in a costume, and it was hard not to say that. It was so endearing. And it's always interesting to see what's popular with the kids nowadays and stuff. And so, another aspect I liked about it. And then later at the Staircase, Halloween became great because we used to do a whole bunch of great stuff for Halloween. We used to, we sometimes did some improv shows. And then they decided to show Rocky Horror one year. And Rocky Horror, of course, I used to absolutely love. I'm surprised I haven't done a segment on it yet, but there's always time. And, in fact, I think I'm going to talk about Rocky Horror in my final segment. Yes, I have. I've decided that. So that's coming up. But anyhow, I actually went to the free showing because I was waiting for something, and there wasn't that many people. But I was with a friend of mine, John Hart, and his son Thorne. And they were surprised that I knew a lot of things to yell out at it. And I even ran up to the screen a couple times and did it. And did some actions that fit. And they loved it. And they, talked to Colette. And next thing you know, they asked me to host it. And that's where, Count Devlin made his debut. He basically hosted Rocky Horror Picture Show. Now, I don't think it's going to happen this year, but it was fun doing it for a couple of years, and hopefully I get a chance to do it in the future again. But I didn't realize my knowledge of it would eventually lead me to host a show like that. And the Staircase always is usually decked out awesomely for Halloween. And so that was another way that Halloween was big. This year it's been weird because we've decorated. We're all ready for it. We haven't watched any specials yet, but I'm sure we will soon. But I work now at Value Village, and one of the things they like is because for Value Village, Halloween is their big retail time. Most retail stores, it's Christmas, but because we're a used store, we sell new and used stuff for Halloween, and it's our big, big time because a lot of people don't necessarily want to buy used stuff for people for Christmas. I don't mind when people buy me used stuff. If it's something I really want or could use, I don't really care if it's new or used or anything. It's the thought to me. But anyhow, they encourage you to dress up. And so I started off small with a couple of hats and some scarves and stuff. But now I've actually been, I've dressed up as a redneck, I've dressed up as a pirate, I've dressed up as a Elvis impersonator. There's nothing like getting into an argument with a customer and they're reprimanding you, but you're being reprimanded and you realize after that you're actually dressed as Elvis while you're, I shouldn't say argue. Excuse me. I shouldn't say argue, I should say quipping or, standing up to a thing, but it's funny to think I'm dressed as an Elvis impersonator. I didn't feel very welcome at Value Village for the longest time, but they actually asked me to be, every Thursday they have this catwalk thing where they have a couple people walking, and I came dressed as a pirate one day, bringing this full circle to the pirate thing. And they came up to me and said, would you like to be in our catwalk? And I said, sure. I thought it would be fun. You know, a lot of people there, you know. I was told everybody loves to dress up for Halloween here. You're going to be amazed. And since I've been there, I don't think many people have. I think maybe a handful have. But I don't care. I'll dress up any chance I get. Or, you know, even when I don't dress up, I'll have like my Halloween earrings in, or I'll wear something Halloween. But anyhow, I agreed to be in their catwalk show. And, you know, everybody was kind of doing their own thing. And then when they called my name, I kind of played it up. I went more for the Johnny Depp style, you know, where I just kind of like, oh, I'm bored. What am I doing here? I'd rather be doing other stuff. And I did some twirls. And apparently, suddenly people that wouldn't talk to me at Value Village started, hey, that was awesome. You were so funny. You stole the show. And it was nice. It was kind of like the breaking point where suddenly people were, hey, he's pretty cool that he would, like, do that. So once again, degrading yourself and, you know, wearing a funny outfit saves the day. And I can't stress enough how being a team player and sometimes just doing things that other people are so uncomfortable with, it makes me thankful that I have the ability to do that, because once again, I think it kind of opened up people and saying, hey, you know, he's not... Because I think sometimes when I get quiet, I think people take it up as he's stuck up, he's really into himself, but it's not the case. Many of you who know me know that once you get to know me, I try to be as honest as possible. So I like, once again, that... You know, being the center of attention, just being my goofy self, not being afraid to put on a funny hat or some earrings or a thing, and suddenly, you know, things are going a little better at Value Village just because I went along with what I believe we should be doing, you know. They say, you know, we like you to dress up, and many people don't, so I don't mind doing it. Yes, it's hot sometimes, yes. It's irritating sometimes, but you know what? At the end of the day, I'm glad I did it. And I know the customers love it, because I get lots of comments. And I still have a couple I'm going to surprise people with, but we'll see. So anyhow, that's my love of Halloween. I could talk about Halloween forever, and in some ways I'm going to. In my next segment, I'm going to count down my 10 scariest movies. I decided, how could I do this? And I decided I was going to go with the 10 scariest. Okay? Don't all have to be necessarily horror movies, too, like legit horror movies. Just movies that unnerved me, we'll go with. Anyhow, and then I am going to pay tribute to one of my favorite movies, one of my favorite soundtracks, a movie that really changed my life, and that's the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I've just decided, full segment coming up a little later. We're going to take a short break, and I'll be back. Welcome back. I'm Devlin, and you are listening to Devlin's Pirate Radio Show, Halloween edition, and I knew... For my Halloween edition, I wanted to count down something. I wanted to do my favorite horror movies, and just because I'm a big movie buff, and I tend to do this on holiday episodes. But what the problem came down to is, was I going to count down my favorite holiday horror movies, or was I going to count down my favorite scariest movies? Because they kind of fall in two different categories. Because there's some horror movies that I absolutely adore, but I don't necessarily find them scary, or I find them a little bit scary. Then there's like the movies that really unnerved me when I saw them, whether I saw them as a child or an adult, but they affected my life. So I didn't know exactly what to do, and then finally I decided, you know what, it's Halloween. It's all about fear and getting scared. So I was going to count down my 10 scariest movies. Now, before you judge me on any of these, keep in mind, I'm going to try to explain the unnerving, but remember, sometimes I was a kid when I saw these, so when you watch these movies now, you might not have the same effect. But I think we all have those movies that kind of unnerve us and take us to a place that we never thought we'd be before, but I'm focusing mostly on fear. So don't laugh if you hear a title that is like, that's not scary, because scary is different from other Everybody has a definition of scary. So this is my 10 scariest movies of all time. Coming in at number 10, again, you're going to giggle when you hear this name. Some of you will understand, because I saw it when I was very young. Number 10 is The Wizard of Oz. I decided to add this on my list because when I was a kid, I remember being terrified a little bit. The witch was unnerving, but her flying monkeys were absolutely creepy. But I also remember as a kid that every time it came on, I remember actually feeling, even though I knew how it would resolve, I remember I always had an unnerving when the witch gives Dorothy a time limit. And I remember, like, she turns over the hourglass and says, once the hourglass is done, you're going to be dead. And I've never been a fan of counting down clocks and stuff, but just Dorothy, like, seeing images of her aunt crying and just lots of different things, and Dorothy breaking down. I remember I was affected as a child that it really creeped me out. Not to mention the witch, like, sets fire to the scarecrow. She does all these, has the trees that grab them. As a kid, this is a very terrifying movie, and when I'm an adult and watch it, I realize now it's not as terrifying, but I can still watch it thinking how terrified I was when I was a kid. So I put Wizard of Oz at the number 10 list, and yes, it is a Halloween-type movie because it does feature witches. Coming in at number 9 is Psycho. Of course, Alfred Hitchcock considered one of his best. I absolutely love Psycho. It sets an atmosphere. I'm a big fan of the new TV show Bates Motel, just because I love the Psycho lore. But I remember that even when I found out the shocking plot twist at the end, I remember that even when I first watched Psycho the first time, it still kinda creeped me out. One of the things that Psycho does so well is that we begin the journey following Janet Leigh's character. And usually when we watch a movie, we instantly know the character that we're supposed to be following in the story and cheering for. But let's be honest, Janet Leigh's character was a little questionable. She was doing some shady things. And then when she gets stabbed in the famous shower sequence, basically, we're suddenly left with no one to cheer for, and we realize the only person we have to follow in the movie is Norman Bates, who we think might be a little off-kilter. It's a wonderful play. I think they've done essays on why it's so unnerving, and just images of, like, the camera angles for the kills were horrible, and of course the shower scene. Maybe it explains why I like to take a lot more baths. At least I'm going to have to make the killer work for me if he comes. But yeah, Psycho was definitely a game changer for me. Now, number 8, some of you may see and think it's ridiculous, but I had to put it on my list because it did give me many sleepless nights. Deep Blue Sea. Now, I love shark movies and I don't love shark movies because I used to go through a thing where I dreamt a lot about sharks. I recently looked up a dream analysis and it wasn't a horrible thing. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I know there was a positive spin on if you dreamed about sharks. But I dreamt about sharks a lot. But I still am tempted by a good shark movie. And I remember when I saw the trailer, I was sitting really close in the theater with my friends. And the trailer just has this one moment after they reveal it, and it looks like the trailer's over, where they just have this shark swoop in. And I remember practically dropping my popcorn. I jumped so hard. I really wanted to go, because I think we like scary movies for the adrenaline. Like, I don't like roller coasters, and I know people who like roller coasters that hate scary movies, and they say, I don't understand why people hate scary movies. And I said, well, it's kind of like going on a roller coaster for people who don't like roller coasters. Some people are lucky enough to love both. So I had to go see Deep Blue Sea in the theater. It was probably one of the last shark movies I saw. Now I watch all my shark movies on DVD. Or Blu-ray because I just can't handle them. But I jumped all the way through Deep Blue Sea, and it still creeps me out. Some of the images of the sharks on that, although there might be a higher shark movie on my list, this one to me just has some of the most scariest images of sharks. It's a good story. It's a lot of fun too. Coming in at number 7. Now, when I told you that I find that my favorite horror movies are separate from my favorite scary films, this is a great thing. One of my all-time favorite horror movies is the movie Scream. I think it was well written. I think it's scary. I think it's this. But I actually think the second Scream was a more frightening film. And I had nightmares from it. So Scream 2 makes it to number 7 on my countdown. Yeah, believe it or not, the follow-up to me was just scarier. Where the first one I thought was clever, it was well written, everything was good, there is at least 3 or 4 scary scenes in it. The opening sequence where they go to see the fake movie, Stab, in the theater, and Jada Pinkett and her boyfriend are there, and everybody's dressed as the killer, and everybody's running up pretending to be stabbed and stuff. And then during the movie, Jada Pinkett's actually literally stabbed, and she goes up and starts screaming, and everybody cheers because they think she's putting on a performance. It's just absolutely terrifying. There's another sequence where Courtney Cox is being chased in, I want to say, like a radio station, and the way they film it, you can see that Courtney Cox is just like a millisecond from being spotted by the killer with every move they make. And it just had me on my edge of my seat. And the final one is they're in a police car with the cage closed, Sydney and her friend, and the ghost face jumps in the car and drives it and winds up crashing it. They have to get out. The only way they can get out of the police car is to go through and climb over Ghostface. And I thought to myself, because he's wearing the mask, you don't know when he's going to wake up, if he's awake. And it was one of the most terrifying things. I remember Ghostface really affected me a lot more after I saw Scream 2, though Scream is a much superior film. Okay, here's one that there are 2 people, horror fans in this movie. There are people that were afraid of the Blair Witch Project and people that weren't. I was afraid of the Blair Witch Project. Keep in mind this was one of the first found footage movies, and if you remember when it came up, it was so... people actually went to that town to go look for these missing kids. Because it follows the story of 3 people who go into the woods and are searching for information on this Blair Witch legend. And they go missing, one at a time, and it's all filmed with camcorders and stuff. First found footage, I'm pretty sure it was the first. Anyhow, I remember being in the theater, not knowing what to expect. It was like a new experience. And I was literally, I remember one moment where I was leaning forward. Now, if you know me in the theater, I'm always leaning back. But I was up forward with my hands gripping the chair in front of me and watching, and all you would see was darkness with trees and stuff. And I remember turning to my friend Heather and I said, you know, watch... if I see like any kind of face in these trees or something, I am literally, you're going to see me jump 3 rows ahead. I know there were a lot of people that were affected by Blair Witch. I know there's some people that don't like it as much. For the people who say there's no ending to the Blair Witch, you better rewatch it because there's a blatant ending to the thing. And that ending is the thing that had me having trouble sleeping at night because I would see images. And I know I've talked to other people who saw the same images. Something to do with somebody standing in the corner. And I swear I would always see my things in my apartment that always looked like a figure standing in the corner. And that's why Blair Witch Project gets number 6. I was terrified of the ads for The Exorcist. Now, I wouldn't have been very young when The Exorcist came out in theaters. So the ads that scared me were when like it was shown on the ABC Sunday Night Movie. And even though it was edited, I remember the commercials freaked me out in a big way. Just like the head spinning around, the pea soup. They wouldn't show a lot, and it was very edited. And then when I finally watched it, I did find that I was kind of, watching it through my fingers, and then I could close my hands over my face. I guess I shouldn't be doing that when I'm talking on the radio because it's muffling my voice. But I remember The Exorcist just kind of unnerving me, and when I finally saw it, it did affect me, but I kind of felt like I conquered my fear because it wasn't as scary because I didn't really see... I saw the censored version. But it was still scary. But it wasn't until they re-released it in theaters for an anniversary that I went to go see it, and I said, I want to see it on the big screen, that I got to see it in its full way. And first of all, the thing that I love most about The Exorcist is that I can't believe a movie like this was even released in 73. You know, I remember hearing rumors of people running out, throwing up, and just terrifying in fear, people passing out in the theater. I wish movies did that to people nowadays. I just think it's awesome, the legend. I love watching, like, documentaries where they talk about how people weren't ready for something like this. And I think now when people watch it, they go, oh, that's not scary. But growing up at the time, you got to remember, we didn't have stuff like this. So this was all new and fresh, and it's sorry that you weren't born in that generation. When I went to see the anniversary version, I saw it full, and I also saw stuff in the movie I didn't see. I didn't see all the little hidden faces in it, and this time I did, and I remember I walked home after the movie, and I literally was terrified of just everything, every little, oh, was that a face? Was that a face? And really watch it, because everybody talks about all the possession stuff, but it's all the little weird faces that really get you. Coming in at number 4 is Jaws. And now, again, I didn't see Jaws in theaters. I saw it on TV first, and I still absolutely freaked out. It did freak me out. Even when I went in my swimming pool and I was by myself, I had a vivid imagination as a kid. I had images of it. I remember even when I was older, my brother and sister-in-law had a waterbed, and one night they decided they wanted to sleep in the living room with the air conditioning. Let me sleep on the waterbed. And I remember I had trouble falling asleep because every time I closed my eyes, I'd picture the movie poster with Jaws underneath me, and I was floating on top of the water on a raft or something. The movie terrified me as a kid, and I'm not surprised that, like, beach attendance when the movie first came out was way down there because of the fact it's a terrifying movie. And what I love is that it still lives up, because I found a friend that had never seen it. And I won't give away the big jump in it, which has nothing to do with a shark, but there's a big jump in it that everybody remembers. In fact, anybody who's seen it probably knows exactly what I'm talking about and thinking about it. And I went and showed him this movie, and it was probably like, decades after it came out. And I watched his reaction when that scene came up, and he still jumped. And I said, wow, I love that a movie from 1975 can still have that same effect on people. Coming at number 3 is Alien. Now, Alien is a bit of a story because I was creeped out by everything at Alien. I remember going to the drive-in and seeing the first trailer for Alien, and all you would see is this creepy voice and images of, like, the movie that didn't explain anything. And slowly I realized there was these little lines coming up at the top that were slowly spelling out the word alien, and I got creeped out. Then they show the egg, and this giant egg, and then the egg cracks, and I was creeped out. That movie poster freaked me out. I wasn't freaked out as much as the Jaws poster, although an awesome poster. The Alien poster always did. In fact, I remember I didn't want to go to the Muppet movie because it was playing next to Alien, and I didn't want to have to walk past that Alien poster because it creeped me out so much. I finally did get to go see Alien, and I absolutely adored the movie. A lot of people forget the first Alien is a horror movie more than a science fiction. It's science fiction horror, but the later movies became more action. But the first one is nerve-wracking because there's a lot of, corridor shots and, like, claustrophobic shots. And I remember I had already seen Alien. I was terrified, but when I finally got to see it on the big screen, it's the only movie I've ever screamed at, and I feel weird because I knew what was coming up. But it was when they were in the air vents, and they were seeing the alien was getting closer, but you couldn't see it, and they were flashing the light bulb, flashing the lights, and then finally the flashlight hits it, and you just see the alien there. I remember me and like 3 girls in the same row all screamed at the top of our lungs. Never screamed in a movie before. And I have to give it kudos, because I had already seen it, and it freaked me out still. Coming in at number 2, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I always avoided this movie, because it creeped me out. I always heard that it was loosely based on a real story, which creeped me out. The whole chainsaw thing kind of creeped me out. When I saw an image of Leatherface, I'm like, I don't know if I'm ready to see this. When I finally saw the movie, I was actually surprised, because it's not only that, it's probably in my top 10 greatest horror movies, too. Because there's so many layers to it. It starts off kind of a slasher film, and then it turns into something totally real when you get to meet the family behind Leatherface. And it almost becomes even more disturbing when it slows down its pace. But images of people being put on meat hooks and things traumatized me. Not to mention it's got a soundtrack that I sometimes put it in my MP3 around Halloween, and it's just got this and I can't even explain it, but you're getting chills if you've seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and it unnerves me so much. And I recently watched it maybe a couple of years ago, and I watched it in the day, and it was still unnerving to me, so many of the scenes. I still force myself to watch it because I love it. I think it's an excellent movie, even though I do still have some problems sleeping, usually because I picture Leatherface and that metal door that he'd rip open and just come running out with the chainsaw. And, whoa. Anyway, as we get to number 1, this not only is the number 1 scariest movie to me, it's also my number 1 favorite horror movie. It unnerved me, every aspect of it, and I had to give this movie kudos because it still gets me even today. It's the movie Halloween, the original from 1978, John Carpenter. The introduction of Michael Myers, not to be confused with Austin Powers. The movie creeped me out as a kid. I remember the movie poster with the pumpkin and the knife. I remember just images I saw of the stalking man. And it took me forever to actually find the nerve to watch this movie. I even owned it a couple times. Like, I bought it on VHS and DVD, and I knew one day I wanted to watch it. I loved horror movies, but even the image of Mike Myers can still give me chills. When I finally watched Halloween, I watched it in the afternoon, so I wouldn't have dreams. Because usually if I watch things in the afternoon, I don't take them. But I still had nights where I had trouble sleeping. I could see Mike Myers' image in the night. I even sometimes slept with a knife by the side of my bed because I got unnerved by this movie so much. It's not the stalking, it's not the stabbing and the killing that gets me. It's all the stalking that leads into it. Because Halloween basically is a nice paced, slow moving it's like a pot boiling. And that when they get there, they really do. And it's all that stalking, seeing him behind bushes. Not to mention I lived in a neighborhood with high, bush fences and stuff. And I walked through that neighborhood and it looked like mine. And just the stalking and him being out in the backyard looking up at her. And even though he would move so slow and you could always think, I could run faster than him, it always creeped me out. The lighting, the music, everything in this movie just terrified me. I still have trouble watching it. I have to be in the right state of mind to watch it. I showed it at the staircase, and the staircase can be pretty creepy at Halloween. So I just kind of put it on quickly for everybody else. And then I could only watch bits and pieces because I knew I'd have nightmares if I stayed and watched the whole movie. The movie still affects me to this day. I will watch it now and again because I like to get my blood racing. Some people probably nowadays don't think of it as scary, but I think people who were brought up with it are still terrified by it. As I said, some of the later Halloweens weren't quite as scary, but still, Michael Myers still does it for me. As you saw in this list, no Freddy Krueger, no Jason. I love those movies, but they didn't have the impact of the 10 I just told you. I'd love to know what your movies that scared you. I don't care whether they're really terrifying or even if you look back now and say, I can't believe I was scared by that. Let me know. I'd love to hear. Anyhow, I'm going to talk about a movie that's Halloween-oriented that didn't scare me but changed my life forever. That's coming up right after this. Welcome back to Devlin's Pirate Radio Show. This is my Halloween episode. Wasn't sure what I was going to talk about in my last segment, but I decided when I mentioned the words Rocky Horror Picture Show, I need to talk about it. It's a movie we commonly watch around Halloween, and this movie is not only a movie I absolutely enjoy, it's a movie that literally changed my life. I remember the year was 1985 when I first saw it. The movie was already 10 years old, and I had heard about the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I knew it was a midnight show where people yelled at the screen and did all these things, but I didn't know much about it. I met my friend that year, Mike Obermeyer, and he was a fan of it, and he actually played songs of Rocky Horror to me, and I absolutely adored the songs. I thought they were great, and I always thank him for introducing me to it. But I didn't really know what was going to come next in my life. We saw that it was coming at the Broadway Theater, which was a wonderful little theater that I got to see a lot of great movies at before it closed down. And Mike said we should go to it. And I talked my parents into it, which I'm surprised I did because I believe it was a later showing, but I really wanted to go see this. So Mike and I want to say a couple of other friends went. I'm not sure who, Richard maybe? But anyhow, we went to the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and all we were told was to make sure you have newspaper with you. And I'm like, newspaper? Why would I want to read through a movie? And they said, no. There's a part where it's literally going to rain in the theater. You see, I was lucky enough to see Rocky Horror when it was in full audience participation. Nowadays, there's certain things you can't do. And I understand why. Because it totaled so many theaters. But I'm lucky enough to have seen it in one of its last full-fledged things. I remember we went to the Broadway, and it was one of my first times going to the Broadway, too. So it was this quirky little theater, and they had, newspaper there. And I grabbed some, not sure what to do with it, but they said you'll know when it happens. And I remember going into this little dank little theater. I loved it when I first saw it. The chairs were all broken up and, worn, and a lot of the backs of the seats had, cigarette burns or even just looked like they were on fire or something. They redid the seats about a year or two later, and then Rocky Horror played there, but they wouldn't do full audience participation. So anyhow, it looked like a really run-down little theater, but I kind of found the charm instantly in it. And basically what transpired was the movie started, we got our seats, and we just were singing along with all the great music. Science fiction started, and just when the lips showed up on the screen, you just knew you were in for something. Now keep in mind, I was going through a lot at this time because I was realizing I was gay. And I had known for several years, but I was going to the part that it was getting hard because I was starting to see my friends starting to date. And yet I couldn't be with the people I wanted to be with. I had crushes on people that were straight. So I couldn't tell them. So I was going through a real afraid people were going to find out and I'd lose all my friends. I was going through a quirky creative point because we had started a band. And, I was dealing with an artistic side. So Rocky Horror feeds into all that. I'm always saddened when people tell me they didn't like Rocky Horror because I can see why you could just watch it and not get it. But when you're in the right state of mind or audience participation, you get to see it. It's so magical that it actually saddens me when I hear people don't get the full impact. So the lips are singing science fiction. We're having a great time. We see the wedding sequence. Suddenly we're feeling confetti and rice getting shot in the air. And literally we're bombarded by rice and confetti. We didn't bring any of this stuff because we weren't prepared for it. But it was fun. We were just getting rice all over us. And I remember it getting stuck in my hair and stuff and confetti. And I was laughing so hard. And then, you're singing other stuff. And then the rain sequence started. And it's over at the Frankenstein place where they go out and you see Janet put newspaper. And as soon as I saw Janet putting her newspaper on her head, I started seeing the rest of the audience. So I quickly got my program for the Broadway, put it on my head, and basically, when I lifted up the newspaper to look at the screen, I saw it rain in a movie theater. It literally... People had squirt guns and squirt bottles, and it literally was raining in the movie theater, and I could see why this is one of the first things that left when they did audience participation. But I am so glad I got to see it rain in a movie theater. It was just unreal. And it was unreal because you were also... The newspaper didn't catch everything, so you had wet spots on you, and it's weird watching a movie like that. But you automatically... almost get into the mindset of Brad and Janet, which was kind of neat. Then, of course, the time warp comes, and everybody's running up and doing it. I didn't run up and do it the first time, but just watching people following the thing, I said, I knew one day I'm going to see this, and I'm going to do it. Little did I know that one day I'd be like leading it in a night that I'd host. Then everybody ran back quick after the time warp, and I didn't know what was happening. Then I noticed they all started clapping like a chant as it was going with the music. And then I saw an elevator come down with high heels in it, and I said, oh, Sweet Transvestite must be coming up, because I remembered the order of the songs on the record. And I didn't know what to expect. And you see Brad and Janet, and then the elevator opens. You see the elevator open, Tim Curry's there, and the audience just erupts in absolute chaos. And I didn't even know what I was looking at. I was just dumbfounded. I've seen pictures of Tim Curry, but the moment was just such a build-up. I actually felt the clapping. My heart started beating in time with the clapping, and I knew we're about to see greatness here. And when he does Sweet Transvestite, I remember thinking, wait a minute. Here's a man who's dressed as a woman, and he's won these people's hearts. Later in the movie, you find out, he's the main villain. You find out that he sleeps with pretty much everybody in the castle. And I'm thinking, these people adore him. He's different. Even though he might be the villain, he's also sympathetic. And they are not turning their back on him because he's dressed in women's outfits and stuff. He's still very masculine in it. And I thought, for one moment, I'm going to be okay being gay. When I come out, it's not going to be easy. But there are going to be people that are going to be on my side. And when I tell people Rocky Horror changed my life, this is a big part of why I tell them that. I got to play Frankenfurter. Oh, actually, after that night, the movie continued. We fell in love with it. I remember going home on the bus. Literally, we're picking rice still out of our hair. I remember being on the bus, pulling rice out and throwing it on the floor. My rebel days. And I just remember it was a phenomenal experience. And I got to wear the Frankenfurter outfit. They didn't really show the movie that often anymore in Hamilton. There was a stage where it was showed one time a year. And I had Corda and her brother Eric. When they turned 16, her parents said they can see Rocky Horror. I know Rocky Horror comes off as innocent. And I know some kids get to see it very young now, but I still think it's a movie that should be shown older when people get it. I think I know people who've seen it way too young and just don't get what it's actually saying. Even the meaning of Rocky Horror, don't dream it, be it. That's huge. But anyhow, I remember I thought it would be fun when we finally show it to Corda and Eric that we would act it all out. We'd dress up. And so we did. Everybody agreed to do it. But they told me, you're going to be Frankenfurter. And I remember my sister-in-law went to a Salvation Army and found an old girdle. And in a course of an afternoon, she dyed it and got it ready for me. Did all my face makeup, everything. She dressed as Magenta. I had my friend Tia as Columbia. My friend Dave was Riff Raff. My brother Paul was Eddie. And we had an amazing time. And I know Corda and Eric absolutely loved it. And their parents absolutely loved it too. I remember even flirting with Corda's father, Martin, with this blue scarf that I'd constantly give him. And it was a wonderful time. And he even admitted he had a good time with it too, even though he was a little nervous about the, what it was teaching and stuff. But everybody had a great time. As I said later, I went to go see a free showing of it, and they were surprised that I knew so much, so that the next year they decided, you should host it. And I said, I don't know about that. I consider myself a big fan, but he goes, but you saw it enough where you were yelling it out. And he goes, yeah, I could probably do a little bit of one. And they put it out there, and we had a sold-out show. Count Devlin hosted it, and I had an amazing time. I did a little pre-show before it, showing Thriller beforehand, and it was nice to kind of mix the 80s and the 70s, and people loved seeing Thriller on the big screen. And then I did it for a couple years, and it was just magical. I love Rocky Horror. I love seeing it. It still lights up my life when I see it. I love when young people discover it. I loved that one of the times that I hosted it, we had a whole bunch of young people that constantly went out to Toronto, and they came to see ours because it was playing in Hamilton. And I love that they got into it. They loved the whole, you talk about being your own sexual being. Everybody talks about, there got to be your own sexuality, whether that's straight or gay or bi or transgender. And this movie was kind of telling you that right from the start. It doesn't matter who you are, just do what you feel is right. And they, a lot of people thought it was a negative thing because everybody was sleeping with everybody. But honestly, to me, don't dream it, be it, is probably one of the biggest lines ever. Like, that's one of the biggest movie lines ever because it's true. Why sit around thinking about doing something when you could go out and do it? Of course, some of you darker people might have things going in your mind that you really shouldn't do. But honestly, I think this is one of the best movie lessons you could learn. It's a movie I definitely recommend you put on. It's more fun when you have friends over, but I can still watch it without because the music is solid. It's such a quick movie. It goes by so fast. I still like to yell out things and stuff. I understand why they don't really have fire anymore or water, but I'm glad I got a chance to see it. I still remember the night that there's a UK version of the movie that has an extra song. The song's on the soundtrack, and I absolutely love it. It's called Superheroes. I remember I went to the drive-in, and I had never seen the UK version. And obviously at the drive-in we weren't throwing stuff in that, but I thought it was a good opportunity. I could still love the songs and stuff. And I remember that moment when I saw Superheroes for the first time. I think my brother thought I was going crazy. I'm like, this is the UK print. We got a version of the UK print. Now I won't play it anywhere without doing the UK print, just for that one extra song that is brilliant. Anyhow, I definitely recommend you checking out Rocky Horror if you've seen it or you haven't. It might not stand up when you don't go with an audience participation, but you know what? Look around. Because the audience participation showings are still out there. Shadowcasts are still out there. And I really think you should check it out at least once like that. And then tell me you hate that movie. Because it's just a movie of its own. To see a movie where they play it and people yell out things. Or get up and dance to the characters. Like, it's just... There's never going to be another movie like it. They have tried with so many movies... But this midnight movie is definitely its own, and I definitely recommend you checking it out. I also definitely recommend you going out and having a great Halloween, whether you go out with the kids trick-or-treating, whether you're giving out candy, whether you're going to a friend's place for a costume do. Enjoy Halloween, embrace it, have a great time with it. I am done this episode. We will be back next time, and I look forward to talking to you very, very soon.